Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I am Sean Butler. Bugsy Malone is over there. She's being a little bit too ball focused this morning. Lots of barking, which has made me have to re-record this several times. But we're going to walk home now, so hopefully we can get some uninterrupted time with you lot and talking about all things Tottenham Hotspur. Guys, do me a favour, smash the like button like you always do. Your like game is so strong and you know how much I appreciate it. I'm sorry for my absence over the last 3 or 4 days. I've been flu-ridden, but I've got a lot to get off my chest now, lots of topics to talk about. And the things I'm going to get off my chest, hopefully, are not just cold and flu. They are Tottenham views for you. Hit the subscribe button, guys, if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell, drop a comment, let me know your thoughts on today's video. When it comes to subscribers, guys, do you remember shenanigans were afoot? Hashtag shenanigans are afoot. Do you remember that? Drew Zilla always keeps that narrative going in the comment section. Shout out to you, Drew. Hope you're well, my friend. The shenanigans are back, guys. They are rear-foot. Shenanigans are double-footed. Double-footed shenanigans are back because since my return to action 6 videos ago, I think maybe 250 subscribers have dropped into the zeitgeist. Welcome to all of you guys, whether you're welcome backs or welcomes, it's irrelevant. But then all of a sudden last night, YouTube decided to scrap 120 off of the book for no reason. I haven't put any content out for 3 or 4 days, and it just happened in 5 seconds. Bang, see you later, bye-bye. So double check you're still subscribed, and if you're not, then resubscribe again. Let's fight back against the shenanigans. Guys, where do we start today's transfer news, views and clues? Let's get the transfer stuff done. So first and foremost, Pedro Porro, linked again to Real Madrid. John Wenham has said that he believes that Daniel Levy would accept only double his money for Pedro Porro. £88 million or more, therefore, would be the number. I've said in a recent video that I think the same. I think that there is always a price, and you have to kind of shake hands with the reality that he is a Spanish guy playing in Spain, especially this time of year. I don't know if you guys saw the training videos of all of the team coming out. I think it might have been on Monday or Tuesday, and it looked like it was brutally cold, and they were all wearing their snoods and kind of hugging each other and wearing gloves. And, you know, the prospect of playing for your boyhood club, the biggest club in the world, in the lovely sunshine of Real Madrid, or of Madrid generally, you've got to be on board with the fact that he's not a Tottenham guy, not a Tottenham lad. I'm sure he's very happy at Tottenham. He always looks very happy, and I love him as a person. I love his approach, his personality, his feistiness. I love the way he grits his big teeth whenever he puts in a last-minute tackle to hopefully save the game, although it wasn't enough against Roma. He did it. I like everything about him. I think he's emerging as one of these types of kind of pure footballers that I think is a kind of trend with regards tactics and formation that seems to be emerging at the kind of top end of the footballing hierarchy and pyramid. I feel like increasingly you're finding defenders that can drive with the ball, create plays. You're finding goalkeepers that are, you know, good footballers that could be midfielders in a different ulterior, alternate universe, a different reality timeline. And you find also, where's Bugsy gone? I don't know where she is. Bugsy! You also find that, fullbacks are increasingly changing and augmenting their own versions to be less sort of defensively minded and more kind of technically gifted. And I think you'll struggle to find too many right backs or fullbacks in the Premier League that are as technically gifted as Pedro Porro. And as we always say, he is versatile beyond his years. I think he is someone that could be easily distributed out into the kind of right side of a midfield two. In an old school 4-4-2, he could be playing as a right midfielder. I'm not sure if he's got the kind of take-on speed and the specialism to be a traditional kind of one-on-one take-on specialist in the wing forward area, but as a kind of old school crosser of the ball, you won't find too many better. Maybe Trent Alexander-Arnold is probably someone who just offers similar skill sets, but just on a higher frequency. But obviously with that, it's very difficult and almost impossible to find someone who's as good as those guys are at all the things with the ball and also have the defensive mindset. That would just be the perfect footballer. And I think Pedro Porro struggles a little bit. We've seen recently a couple of times, I think against Manchester City and against Roma, delicate headers, defensive headers late on, unnecessarily putting us at risk. Thankfully, the goalkeepers were both on their toes and managed to kind of get us out of trouble. But there is vulnerabilities to Pedro's defending. And look, £88 million or more. Obviously, you go to an eye-watering number, and it would be Tottenham's second most expensive or third most expensive sale of all time. Would you Would you be on board it? Look, I think you have to pick a number and be on board with it at some point, because you don't want to like upset Pedro Porro and then you get a different version of him, a sulky version potentially or something. In fact, you know what, I'm not even sure that would happen. I think he's professional to a T, where I don't think he necessarily would let that impact him. But either way, you can possibly find enough reasons within his game to sit there and say, could you improve? Possibly, probably. Now, this video isn't going to go through the names of players that I would put on the list of potential replacements. We can do that if the story heats up in speculation. However, I think that at some point you kind of go, oh, you know, I'm okay with it. That said, it's going to be a difficult thing, and it depends on whether or not you see Ange here for the long run. If you do, then I think you're going to struggle to find a better right back that has more of a kind of a lean into Ange's system than Pedro Porro does. And I think probably Pedro Porro does enjoy playing this version of football more than he would a traditional back four system in a traditional back four managerial model. So it'll be an interesting one. I'd like to know your thoughts. Would you sell him, and at what price? And let's start the ball rolling. Who would you go after? Who do you think you would like to see in a world where he was to be sold in the summer? I would suggest that he's not going anywhere. He's got a contract until 2028. I don't think Real Madrid will pay 100 million euros for him just yet. But again, even though it's an eye-watering number, when you factor in how much the inflation in football, the player transfer fees has become in some areas, some parts, bearing in mind, you know, we paid 40 odd million or 35 to 40 million for Archie Gray, who is a midfielder, but obviously a versatile player that can play left back and right back, etc. It's a lot of money for a player that's not really had too much in the way of Premier League minutes this season, not really that much in the way of exposure to the highest level of football. And so you're paying for a pretty premium for a young talent. But Pedro Porro isn't that much older. He's not that old. He's 23, right, I think, or maybe just turned 24. So, you know, long time left in his career. Can he still improve? For sure. Will he improve with more exposure to this system? I think so. I think he's that sort of personality. So I'm not really on board selling him. I really do like Pedro Porro, but I think that at some point you have to shake hands with there being a price point for everybody, and Daniel Levy for sure will know that. Bugsy, come here, please. Over here, please. Come here. Good girl. Good girl. Sorry. Come here. So we'll park that story for now. Guys, let's move on to the next one, and that is, of course, for the Fraser Foster debate. James Trafford at Burnley, linked to Tottenham. He was linked to Newcastle last summer. £20 million was supposed to be the fee, and I think he got advice. So the story says that his advice was not to go, because why would you go and play second fiddle to Alex Pope, and just not to play any minutes when your career is just blossoming and you're becoming, you know, such a regular, and you have all these opportunities maybe with England in the future, all of those things. You've got time, and you know, build yourself up to become a future number one at a club where you're playing minutes. And at Burnley, he's only conceded 6 goals this season, so it looked like a right decision. And he would have gone and played second fiddle at Newcastle. So, not Alex Pope, Nick Pope. So the conversation is, well, look, you know, would Tottenham go in for him? And here's where I want to sort of talk a little bit about this goalkeeping thing. First and foremost, Fraser Foster did himself absolute credit and no injustice whatsoever in the performance against Roma. I thought he put in 2 or 3 world-class saves. In the first half, people were talking, like myself last week was joking just last week, that if you want him to get down to a corner placed shot in the Thursday night game, then he better start diving on Tuesday morning. Such is the time it takes for the big guy to get down. But look, he was brilliant. In the first half, he made that save low down to his left-hand side, and it was sensational. Second half, 2 or 3 top draw saves that kept us with a marginal lead. And obviously, in the end, he couldn't do anything with the equaliser. An interesting game, a great game of football on Thursday. The reactions, typically Tottenham fans, one way or the other. I think the fair result, the fair analysis would be that it was a good game. I think most people underestimated how good Roma were going to be, and probably the way that Roma came and played their football. I think that it wasn't a typical Italian performance, but it was a brilliant game of football, end-to-end stuff. And if you like entertainment, then certainly you can't go home disappointed. And you know what? We're going to come to Ange's comments in a second. This is going to be a long video, I feel like, guys. Lots to get through. But with regards Trafford, look, great goalkeeper, great potential. Would you rather him than Fraser Foster? Look, no disrespect to Fraser Foster, but however you think of him, great performance. I still think that Tottenham need to plan for the future. And do we really have it in like Whiteman and Austin, I don't really understand. I still don't understand why it is that we're shelling out 5-year contracts to people that are 26 or 27 years old who have got no ambition of their own to go out there and forge their own career. What sort of mindset does that demonstrate to you? No disrespect to them, I don't know them, but there's a reason I don't know them. I don't know anything about them. It's because they haven't done anything. And that is, a big deal, I think. At 26 years old, if you're a goalkeeper, I know your goalkeepers last longer, but like, where's the personal drive to go out there and go, no, I'm not going to rest on my laurels and pick up 10 grand a week and have a £500,000 a year salary and lovely little cushy life and rock up to training and do 2 hours a day and then go home and play PlayStation or raise a family or whatever it is that they do. But like, you're blessed with enough talent to get onto Tottenham Hotspur's roster, yet not enough desire to go and test yourself. I don't know, it just seems, maybe I'm wrong, tell me if I'm wrong, maybe if I'm missing something, I don't know, but it just seems odd. It just seems odd to me. And when you haven't had that much experience or exposure by that age, you start to go, well, how are you going to cope under pressure in big moments if you do get called in to play? Now, obviously they are third and fourth choice, and you'd have to be incredibly unlucky for both your first team goalkeeper and your reserve goalkeeper to both be injured in the same season. But let's not forget, Fraser Foster was it a broken foot last season? Was that right? Was it? I think it was a broken foot. So his first game back was only against Coventry, which was, not his best performance. But then against Galatasaray, I think he did a great job, and I think against Romero he did a great job. So I'm not that worried about him, but I would still argue that Tottenham at some point need to figure out what they want to be when it comes to that insurance policy, because it is an insurance policy and it's a meaningfully important one that you can't just ignore. And I think that Daniel Levy, here's one for you, for all the Levy outers who think I'm a lapdog who always defend him. I don't, by the way. I've always said that his risk profile, his risk tolerance, being a property guy where he looks for nothing as safe as houses, I don't think it necessarily levels up to what you need to be as an owner of a football club that has ambitions to get to the top. And the risk profile has been easy to criticise over the years, and I've always mentioned that and stood by that. And look, if anybody should be someone who recognises and appreciates the need for insurance policies, it would be somebody who has a risk profile like a property investor. The insurance markets, for what it's worth, guys, for those of you who don't know, right, you have insurance, so people that need insurance can go and get their stuff insured. In the Lloyd's of London building, for example, is where the kind of market is for that in London. But then you have the reinsurance market, which is where people that have got insurance, people that underwrite insurance policies, will then go and trade off some of that risk with other insurers, right? So it's called the reinsurance market. And then those people that underwrite other people's underwriting of insurance policies will then reinsure that. So that's called the reinsurance. Now, I'm not sure if there's a reinsurance market, but either way, you can see that there is, when it comes to big money, when it comes to risk tolerance, there is a market for people who want to divest their risk to the point where you can lock in certain returns and essentially work to like a risk-free with a certain premium marketable exercise. And it's very common. Billions, trillions of dollars probably go through that kind of market all the time. And getting off the topic here, Daniel Levy, I would have thought, would be someone that's very familiar with the reinsurance market. And yet, when it comes to the football club, I don't think he necessarily has adopted that when it comes to our goalkeeping position, because our second choice goalkeeper is the insurance policy. And when it goes wrong, when your first team goalkeeper goes wrong, what do? Well, you hope that your second choice goalkeeper is there. But this guy, Fraser Foster, he's old, right? He's not getting any younger. He got himself a renewed contract last year after flaky performances in Fulham in the Cup, for example, and he had an injury, a big injury. So, like I say, you have to be unlucky for both your goalkeepers to be injured, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility. And I don't think there is enough kind of attention being placed in that direction. I've been saying it for a long time, and you only need it when you need it, and when you need it, it needs to happen. And unfortunately, I don't think we've been prepared. That said, thus far, Fraser Foster has done nothing to embarrass himself. He's been very impressive in the 2 games that I've seen him, and I've got no criticisms of him. I just criticised the club a little bit for, I think, for deprioritising positions, and from someone who's an owner who has probably still got his finger on some of the strategic planning with regards to transfers. I just think that there is, they've taken their eye off the ball a little bit in that regard, because if something was to happen to Fraser Foster, then we're going to have to dip our toe into the Brandon Austin or Alfie Whiteman market, and we just don't know what we're getting there, do we? We don't know. We have no sample size to know what those guys are going to be like. So unnecessary risk from a guy who usually avoids risk at all costs. How do you feel about that? Let me know. With regards Trafford, guys, look, I mean, great. I'd very much like him to come in. For what it's worth, though, you look at the other clubs around us in the top 6, whatever. Most of them don't have significant options. Arsenal went from kind of feast to famine, or a little bit with regards last season, them having Ramsdale and Raya battling it out for first choice, and then they've got rid of Ramsdale and brought in the guy from Bournemouth, whose name escapes me, who's worth about £1 million. So, have they gone back? And I'm not even sure David Raya is that spectacular as a goalkeeper as a first choice. So maybe it's just a commonplace. It's difficult to know how to get the second choice goalkeeper right, because how do you have someone that is good enough that when he steps in, you're more than confident, but also that person is willing to play second fiddle for most of the time. I think that there is the argument that you can't have 2 first-choice goalkeepers battling out for the first-choice spot, because it just creates a disharmony and a discontentment and a lack of settled kind of settlement in the back 5, where you need that kind of cement on your team sheet. And so it's difficult, right? You look at Manchester United, Altay Bayindir, a player that Tottenham were linked with from Turkey. I mean, looks maybe they're better settled than some. Depends how you feel about their first choice goalkeeper. I'm not massively impressed with him. Manchester City, of course, they're fine. Chelsea, who have they got? Jorgensen, who looks like a good player. They've got 3 or 4 goalkeepers, and and their number 1, Sanchez, I think it is. Again, probably a little bit more settled there, but a lot of money and a lot of risk, and that's a different kind of element. The pendulum on that kind of risk profile has swung the other way with regards the approach of their owners. And by the way, we're going to talk about owners more in just a second as I move on to the kind of final topics here. And we're going to use Chelsea as the litmus test. But yes, they have a slightly different approach and probably have enough cover in the centre back department. Newcastle, probably no stronger than their number 2 is no stronger than Foster. Liverpool, obviously Kelleher. They've got the other guy, Mamardashvili, coming in. Options there, but again, next season one of those guys will be out to make room for Mamardashvili. So, it's a difficult circle to square to find a solution to how do you keep your number 2 happy to play number 2, to play second fiddle, but also at the same time have enough quality in your locker. And most of the time, a lot of teams go for the older player that's on their way out, on their way down. And Fraser Foster obviously is our version of that. And like I say, maybe I spent too much time talking about it. As of right now, he's done nothing to give us any reason to think he's not the guy that can do a good enough job. But you know that Tottenham will look in the January transfer window to go again. And if an injury to your goalkeeper forces you to look at the transfer window again, then it tells you that you were running the gauntlet of risk that you shouldn't have had to happen. And when it comes to an owner, again, this is where I criticise Levy, who definitely still has his say on the transfer policy with regards youth, with regards, the homegrown and the kind of resell on thing. Even though he might be taking his hand off the negotiations for the most part, he still very much is directing travel. And so, to me, the question marks there have to be just around preparation. And I think that it's a fair one to call. Next up, guys, let's talk about this. Staveley, the Newcastle investor, the lady. The story is that she's still involved in the. Hi mate, you all right? Good, thanks, buddy. So it's Amanda Staveley, the Newcastle investor. She's obviously, the stories are that she is looking for Tottenham Hotspur as the next port of call for her kind of her investment, her involvement, and that looks increasingly like it's going to come. If from anywhere, it's going to come from the Middle East. Now, we don't know what the outcome is with regards to any of those negotiations. I think what it comes down to, from what I can gather, looking into things and talking to a few people, I think what it comes down to is ultimately how much is going to come in, how much of that money is going to go out to the pockets of the Joe Lewis Foundation and his family, how much control will Daniel Levy have to give up, if any, in regards to the running of the football club? Will he still essentially be able to get his dividends, and not his dividends, sorry, he doesn't take dividends, his nice bonuses and his salary, and he still wants to have the overarching thing? I would also argue, guys, that I'm not putting this down to any kind of religion or cultural differences, but obviously there is that background lurking thing, especially with regards right now what's happening in the Middle East, the tensions that are firing up between with Israel and Hamas and all the things that are out there, and those troubles. But with regards the I guess the threat of World War III, and let's be honest, on some level it does sort of come down to religion and geographical or territorial demands around religious hotspots, if you like. And so, given that Qatar has, been the home, if you like, of the leader of Hamas for a long time. Not that I want to get into the politics, not that I even fully understand them, to be honest. It's such a complex beast of a topic that I'm not in any way qualified to talk about. However, just from a footballing perspective, you can see that there might be a little bit of overlap. There might be a little bit of a difficulty in seeing the kind of the Jewish foundations of the club and the ownership as it currently sits, getting into bed and shaking hands with the leaders of a country who have played host to the leaders of Hamas, which, however you want to describe them, terrorist organisation, whatever, freedom fighters, however you want to see it, not my position. You just can see that kind of thing could be complex, right? And also, Daniel Levy, probably more importantly, wants his finger in the NFL pie, and so he would love, I think, to get into bed more predominantly with an American investor that somehow is related and involved with the NFL, so that he can get his payoff. Joe Lewis can get their payoff. He can get introduced into the American market. The American market can bring an NFL team to London. All of those things can become far more secure. He can still maintain overarching control either of the Tottenham Hotspur Football Club and that stuff, or Tottenham Hotspur, the NFL club, right? The NFL team. All of those things are things that I see his interest and his next stage of his career, next stage of his money-making ambitions are far more looking west towards America than east towards the Middle East than to Qatar. Now, understandably, I'm not sure if she has those same connections with people in America as she does with the Middle East. And as of right now, when it comes to ownership takeover news in the zeitgeist, it seems like if it is stably, then her connections are in the Middle East. So it's a very fascinating topic. It's a very fascinating kind of spinning of plates here. Will Joe Lewis lean in and say, look, I want out, man. I've only got X amount of time left on this planet. I want my family looked after. I've had enough of this. So look, my side, my slice of the pie here, the ENIC slice of the pie, listen, I want the best, I want the most money. I don't really care about your NFL ambitions, bro. I want out. Whereas Daniel Levy, overarching control, decision maker, but minority shareholder in the grand scheme of things relative to Lewis and that family. And ENIC, who has the biggest say? Who has the biggest sway in any development and negotiations of that story? It's going to be a fascinating one. It won't happen anytime soon. I would be very surprised if it did, but let's probably say that maybe by this time next year, by the summer, maybe we'll get some more concrete answers. My guess is that Qatar and anywhere like that is probably a smokescreen. I would imagine that Daniel Levy will lean in and will utilise any number of variables, two of which I've already mentioned, to suggest that it's just easier and better and cleaner and probably more prosperous in the long run for the football club in terms of brand exposure, fan base into an emerging market, and all that kind of massive blend and crossover of value to turn the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium into a complex arena that can be multi-sports. And so for me, if I was a betting man, and I am, I would probably say, look west, don't look east. Let me know your thoughts, guys. Like, subscribe and comment, and we'll be doing a show later, hopefully talking about the Fulham game, so keep an eye out for that one. Enjoy your Saturday. Love you all. Shenanigans are rear foot, so make sure you hit the subscribe. Bye-bye.